Hey, space monkeys! Welcome to the maiden voyage of our interview series. I'm your host, Captain Zant. This is my cat, though you can't see him. His name is Kai. He's cool. He's quiet. And yes, he is named after the character in Lex. But really, that doesn't matter. What we're here for is to talk to someone I'm glad I can call a friend, Mr. George Kayaian, filmmaker, creator of Star Trek Antyllus and Star Trek The Multiverse Crisis, among other things. He's been a filmmaker for a while, so we have a bit to talk about. So welcome, George, and so glad to have you here. Thanks for accepting the invite.
Thank you. I'm deeply honored. I'm very excited about this.
That's fantastic, man. I'm excited too. It's our first one, and so glad to have someone like you on board because I really am a fan. Ever since the first Antyllus I saw, and I watched everything up through then. I think there was just the three episodes at that point. So, but whenever the new ones
Right.
come out, I'm like right on it that day. I make a deal of it, I make sure I get to watch it with a big lunch or dinner or something nice. And then in the meantime, also went back and watched the Multiverse Crisis trilogy. So, been a fan. So
That's
really
so
glad to
cool.
have you
Thank
here.
you.
Great. So, yeah, anyway, let's start with some questions, I suppose. That's why we're all here. Uh, when did you first start making films, man?
I'm ready.
Okay, did you
I
get.
I absolutely love making films. I've been doing it since like 1978, and I just find it's the perfect medium to get my ideas out there.
Wow, man, long time. What was your earliest stuff?
I actually had my dad's Super 8 film camera without sound, and in 1978 to 1982, all my films were silent, just visual images with a separate soundtrack on cassette. And then video came along by 1984, and that's really when I started doing my video films because I had sound finally to work with.
Wow, wow, man. Now see, that's in stick to itiveness, man. That's making it happen. Got to admire that. Shit. So,
Thank you. The Super 8
I'm sorry.
the
What?
Super 8 medium was very limiting because without sound and the limiting technology, those early films were just attempts at telling a story with great limitations. But when video came along, it really did open up the doors to making a real movie. I not only had sound, but I had other options too.
So what was your first pieces of kit then that really started getting you where you wanted to go?
The I guess you could say because I was born in the '60s, but my main influences were Star Trek and Star Wars, and I was so inspired by them. I just felt I had to do my version of science fiction, and I started with a little bit of clay animation, and I did sort of my own version of Star Wars using the little figures, and animating them.
All right.
That's sort of where it all started.
So I take it you're also a big Harryhausen fan then too, huh?
Yes, I am, but I have to say, as I'm getting older, my field of influences are getting more narrowed down. Where I think Star Wars is a great playground for just pure action, Star Trek allows the idea of philosophies and social commentary to a greater degree, which is why I think I always end up going back to Star Trek at some point.
I agree with that analysis. Which is why I always found the argument that people have, and they still do it. I don't know why. Which is better, Star Trek or Star Wars? You're like, oh, apples and oranges, guys. Come on, move on. You know. Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's room for both.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we're not going to get off on a big Star Wars tangent here, but it was never meant to be like Trek was. It's the big retelling of the stories we've been telling since Gilgamesh. And it's meant to be that big epic kind of story that's, you know, rehashed in a new way, you know, for a new generation. So
Yeah, it was like the perfect solution to like the old Flash Gordon serials. You know, it was kind of a soap opera in space, and where Star Trek took, I guess, another intellectual branch, where it was your chance to say what you thought about what your society is and what's going on with humanity in general. Where Star Wars was more interested in, you know, good versus evil. Star Trek was more all those shades of gray in between.
yeah, yeah, and more so post Roddenberry, I'd say, with that. But as far as the cerebral, when you touch on that, I'd say absolutely right, and just too cerebral even to have almost survived, because, you know, the pilot, which, God, I would have been, nothing against Shatner, but I would have been damned happy to see Jeffrey Hunter stay in as captain. It's always been one of my favorite episodes, but it nearly lost them the series because it was too cerebral, you know. And unless, you know, Lucille Ball hadn't stepped in with her power of Desilu, there would be no second chance for Roddenberry and Star Trek. They were
Yeah,
almost,
you know, it's funny. I love Jeffrey Hunter, and I love his movie career and everything. The interesting thing about him was his character was so serious that, in a weird way, there would have been almost no room for Spock had he continued. But once Shatner came in, and he was sort of like the opposite, you know, very emotional and very passionate. That's when it allowed Spock to develop. You know, Leonard Nimoy often said that Shatner allowed Spock to exist. And but Jeffrey Hunter was such an intellect and a quiet, brooding character. You wouldn't have had that dichotomy, and the
yeah,
characters might never have, developed as much.
that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that.
It made more sense to update the special effects because people are a lot more demanding now, and they don't care if you have no money. They just want to see a professional-looking product.
Yeah, I hear you there, which is it's just part of a real. In a way, it's good and bad because it does kind of separate out the real truer fans. You know that they want the good story. They're willing to overlook maybe some set problems or something like that, or some makeup or costume issues. You know, it's the real world. You know, uh, but there's so many of them out there, like you say. If they don't see a bit of flash to the production, they just stop watching.
Yeah, I think when people are not impressed with $100 million movie, it's going to be very difficult to impress them when you have like $100 production.
Yeah,
It's just that they're just going to judge you, you know.
yeah, yeah, and it's so ridiculous when you read through comments on, and I'm sure you've read them and maybe gotten them. I don't know about that because whoever write you that'd be an idiot. But you always see it on indie production channels, like in the discussion and the comments. Someone's always bagging on them about something, and it's like, well, really, how many movies have you made, dude? You know, talk to me after you post your resume. You know.
Yeah, one of the things that amazes me so much is, it's basically all free. So in other words, if you're not a fan of like fan films, then why would you be angry if you take that choice to watch a fan film?
Yeah.
It always amazed me how angry people get. We're not charging them money; it's all free,
Yeah.
and you're free to leave the channel. Yeah, I just never understood the animosity. We're just trying to entertain here, and if you're the type of person that can't stand anything non-Hollywood, then don't waste your time.
And let's face it, CBS and Paramount are not going to be putting out TOS stories anytime soon. Yeah, it's the indie Trek makers that are putting out the TOS stories. It's the only source there's been pretty much since the original, except for the few little, those funny little callback episodes with a bit of time travel, like on DS9, Trials and Tribulations, and so
Yeah,
on. But besides that,
yeah,
you never
you're
see
absolutely
TOS.
right. The funny thing is that we're the fans that are making the Star Trek movies these days. We're able to return to the universe and tell new stories, and hopefully the people can overlook the lower production values because are you telling a good story? Are you entertaining? But the fact that professional Star Trek is sort of in a diminished mode right now. I can understand also the popularity of the fan films. People want new Star Trek, and it's fun to play in that universe. And I got to tell you, when I made my first Star Trek movie, I was so exhausted. I had no intention of ever doing another Star Trek movie. It was like 1998, and I said, okay, I'm done. I did my Star Trek movie. And then I got this idea about the Klingons, because they had, at that point, never approached why the Klingons had changed. And that got me thinking, and that's when I made my second Star Trek movie, which eventually led to my third Star Trek movie. And then when I wrapped that trilogy up, I said, okay, I'm done now. I did my trilogy, no more. But then, of course, you get inspired. And as a filmmaker, I said, I have other stories to tell, but I want to set it in a different way. My parents had given their all for so long. I mean, the first one was shot in 1982, the second was shot in 2002, and then the third one was shot around 2009. So it was a long time for them to be playing these characters, and I wanted to retire them honorably, and that's why I created another ship and another crew. And there's always, as long as there's stories to tell, I'll revisit Star Trek. But the day that it's not fun anymore, I have nothing to say, then I'll walk away gracefully.
Yeah, there you go. And speaking of the end of the trilogy, I won't put out any spoilers, but I liked the end. Oh, I did like the ending.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's always nice when you get to the end of a big, long experience and they don't blow the ending. Don't you? You just hate that. You get through this big, epic story and then they cheese out the ending. It's not even close. It was a great ending. It was really good.
I thank you so much. I really wanted to give my parents a kind of a goodbye scene, if you know what I mean, just to jump ahead in time. And it was kind of emotional filming that because they had been playing these characters for so long. And there was a lot of goofing around and we had a lot of laughs. But at the end of the day, they put in a great performance. And I treasure that last scene in the trilogy with my parents. And I'll have that forever. I'll always be grateful for it.
And it's a memorable scene, that's for sure. I mean, it sticks out in my head ever since I saw it. So, and I've seen a lot of
Thank you.
I've seen all your Trek as far as I know. So, but that's definitely something that one sticks out because it really stays in the tradition too of the good wrap up that Star Trek has usually done in their finale episodes. There's some really great send off that goes on somehow. And you had the great send-off. So.
Oh, thank you so much. I try so hard to always remember that Star Trek is about people first. It's the characters. And if I'm limited in my special effects area, where I don't have $100 million budget, then it always is the most important thing is to have the characters be someone you can either relate to, or I owe it to the audience at this point, after 3 movies, to at least give you a hint as to the future of the characters. So I try very hard. Everything I make is from the heart. It's not done cynically. It's more organic. I'm trying very hard to be faithful to Star Trek and its format.
Yeah, and sticking to it as the traditional storyteller that Star Trek is always, its writers have always been true storytellers.
Has a limited shelf life, so I had to film everything on the bridge. So I actually have filmed more than 26 episodes. I actually filmed about 30 episodes worth of bridge scenes, which I may or may not use in the future. But the set is long gone now. So anytime you see the bridge, all of that stuff's been filmed.
Wow, jeez. So from there on out, then you're just you're still doing the same thing with other sets as you build them. Film a bunch of scenes you think you're going to need maybe for later episodes, and you're piecing it all together as it, say what's the next episode 6?
Once in a while I have to rebuild a section of the bridge for say a brand new scene, or if I think of a new line or something, I'll actually rebuild a section of the bridge and film that. But and which is it's difficult. It takes a lot of effort to build the bridge. But for the most part, all the bridge stuff is done, and now I have to just film the on-location stuff. per episode, or if I've made many sets for, alien planets and things like that, but that's on a need, per episode basis.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of that, the last episode, the sets for the planet were really good. Or the ship. I'm
Oh,
thinking of
thank
the
you.
alien ship. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that last one.
everything is paper. It's all paper and tape.
Well, the lighting, you did a lot with the lighting. I could tell. You used the lighting really well.
Thank you. Everything is built in my apartment, so when you see those sets, that's the remains of my kitchen, my living room, my bedroom. So my poor wife, she just shakes her head and says, "Get this done as soon as we can so we have our apartment back."
Oh man. Hey, have you ever thought about putting up a GoFundMe campaign or something?
Zant, I actually like doing everything myself financially. I don't like to ask for money, and I just like the idea of working in this kind of very low to no budget way. I don't like to ask people for money. All I like to do is I like to entertain them. I like them to watch, but I just didn't want to go that route. And I'm not knocking anyone that does go that route. I totally get it, but there's something about the way I work. It's a family thing. I have my own art supplies in a way. I recycle everything. I just don't feel I need to borrow any money, if you know what I mean. I just like working in this no budget world.
Oh, well, it doesn't seem like then you need any funding because you got it going just fine and dandy. One of the Certainly one of the better indie Trek productions I've seen out there.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and it's also consistency too. I don't want to have one episode look like it's $1 million, and everything else looks like it's $20. I'd rather keep the quality consistent and let the audience know what they're in for. I don't want my audience to not know about the varying quality. I'd rather them like me for what I am and for what my series is, and hopefully by the end of the run of the series, it'll all be consistent and people can enjoy the level that it's at.
That's a really good point. It's a really good point. How long do you think you got what, 20 more? Well, you said you filmed 30 actually, so you still got more than 20 to finish filming. How long you figure that's going to take you? That's a hefty chunk of work.
Well, here's the thing. If you look at the first 5 episodes, I was getting them out at a pretty even rate. But my wife had gotten very ill, and it derailed me for a while. And fortunately, she's recovering. She's fighting the good fight, and it's allowing me to kind of return to where I left off. So I'm hoping starting this year to get the episodes out in a very consistent manner. Things should happen pretty quickly if everything goes well on the personal front.
Right. Well, I know everybody out there, they better be sending their best wishes along. And yeah,
thank you so much.
Really glad to see you getting back on track, and it's good news that things are getting better. And
I can tell you this, Zant. I can tell you this because you've given me this wonderful opportunity. The first thing you're going to see from our group is, like I said, that movie Eye of the Tempest, which should be out in a few weeks. So keep an eye out for that. That's a co-production, but that's the first new stuff coming from my side also. And then right after that's been out, I'm hoping to get some new episodes out. I'm currently working on 2 new episodes to the point where I can see the end in sight. And there's 4 more that I'm hoping to film when the weather turns a little bit nicer. So there should be some consistent product coming out, and I thank everyone for their patience. I just had to take myself out of the filming for a while to support my wife. But hopefully, it's all going to come together again.
Well, I know I'm certainly looking forward to that. Definitely. God, I did it again to myself. I was trying to remember a question because I wanted to listen to what you were saying, and I forgot it again. It's one of those that wasn't written down on the page. It's gone like a fart in the wind now. So anyway, I guess I just will have to move on to another question. Oh, well, since this is my first one, we'll be getting better at it. Oh, but I remember now what I was gonna say is for you people out there listening, anything we're talking about for George's Productions, you can find it in the description below. All the links to his website, his YouTube channel, etc. will be down there, so you can easily find his stuff and start watching after you listen to the interview, of course. Don't go watching before you finish listening to this. Okay, now we're moving on. Actually, your newer film, give us a little bit of info, if you want, on that. The Tempest.
The Eye of the Tempest movie
Yeah.
coming out.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that one.
I'd love to tell you about it. And again, you're the first person to really know. It started off as just another episode of Antyllus, and I asked my friend Kenneth to kind of do like a guest appearance, and he loved the script. And then shortly after, he said, "Hey, can I film an expanded amount of scenes? You know, can I make my story part of it larger?" And I said, "Hey, absolutely." And the movie kind of grew out of that. So it went from being a single Antyllus episode to a Starship Saladin / Antyllus episode, and we decided to make it a crossover movie. And I can tell you from what I've seen, it's going to be pretty awesome because Kenneth is an amazing filmmaker in his own right, great special effects person, and so he's doing his side in Texas. I had already filmed my side of it. I sent him some edited footage and some unedited footage, and he's actually putting the whole thing together. And from what I understand, it should be out hopefully in a couple of weeks.
Oh, fantastic. Oh. And Saladin's a
It was actually
well-liked
good
show,
timing
too.
there. It was good timing because, you know, with my wife's illness, I wasn't really able to do the full-time editing that I normally do. And Kenneth said, "Can I do the editing on this?" And I said, "You know what? The timing is perfect, you know." So I trust him, and it was nice to be able to send. I had edited a couple of scenes, but for the most part, I just sent him the raw footage, and he's putting it together beautifully.
Nice. It's kind of like, yeah, you mind if I edit? Oh, please do edit. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, how long is each episode?
Each episode's about 35 minutes.
Wow. So that's over 3 hours of film you got there in that story.
Yeah, and it was written too to have like a to be continued part of it, if you know what I mean. We couldn't do that with the 2-hour film version of it, but certainly following my original script, each episode has this kind of natural to be continued, you know, which hopefully the viewer can't wait to go back and see the next chapter. I got to tell you one thing though, restoring Honor Bound is extremely difficult. The VHS masters, we shot everything on VHS tape, are very deteriorated after 30 years of being in storage, and it's taken everything I have to restore sound and picture, and it's really been a challenge. So it might not look it, but the amount of work it takes to assemble Honor Bound has been incredible. I'm sort of just getting going on episode 3, the third episode, and yeah, it's just a ton of work. For every minute you watch, it's like been about 10 hours of work behind the scenes.
Wow. Wow. It must be a labor of love because that sounds excruciating.
Oh, it's agonizing.
Oh, well then we'll all appreciate the episodes a lot more, knowing all the work that goes into restoring
I hope
them.
so.
Oh man, so let me ask, since we've kind of get the impression now you've covered different genres in your filmmaking, who would you say some of the bigger influences as far as films and filmmakers have been for you?
I have so many that I do really love, but I have to say off the top of my head, I'm an absolute huge fan of Kubrick, Spielberg, early Lucas, James Cameron. You know, these guys just Francis Ford Coppola. are the main ones. You would say those are the mainstream directors that have influenced me so much. And but I never wanted to emulate them to the point where I was copying them. But I just always wanted to tell stories on a large scale and in an entertaining way. I guess if I can give one example, because I don't even know if you know about it. There's a movie posted on my channel called Fragments, and Fragments is unlike any film I ever did before. It's like this extremely slow burn of a character study, and it's got its foot firmly planted in a Twilight Zonian kind of frame of reference. It's meant for the audience to watch the film, but in a way that it allows you to come up with your own answers. There's no right, there's no wrong answers. I've had many people who have watched the film come up with incredible conclusions, and they're all right. There's no trick here. It's meant to challenge you to come up with your own answer. But I would say that's the closest I've ever shot a movie in a Kubrickian style, or even like maybe a David Fincher style, where Honor Bound and other films that I've done is more in a like a Spielbergian, Lucas, Cameron type of way.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, I had missed that one completely. I'll have to go and check that out. Fragment.
I would love to see what you think of that one.
Okay, yeah, because you kind of have me when you say Twilight Zone-ish, because that's a favorite of mine ever since childhood.
I can tell you that's the movie that that my wife and I became an official couple. We met on a comedy film that I wrote called Bus, which is also posted on my film. But we didn't really know each other. But during Fragments, I gave her the lead role, and she was so awesome in it. And within 6 months, we were inseparable.
Oh, wow. So it's one of those. It happens in real life too, not just in Hollywood. Meet your spouse on the set.
Yeah. I can honestly say, Zant, that my filmmaking is been rewarding just in my personal life. I never would have met so many incredible people, even like you. I wouldn't have. There's so many things I've been rewarded by just being creative that I could never give up filmmaking. It's really given me my life.
Well, as a fan, that's good to hear. I definitely want to keep watching your work for a good long time to come.
If I survive the upcoming storm, that is.
Oh, yeah. Well, just make sure that those VHS tapes are safe.
I will.
Speaking of stories and stuff you mentioned earlier, I was curious. I always kind of wondered if you had any funny Trek stories from, like from when you're filming, just the things that happen. If there's some funny stories that stick out in your head that you just like to go over some days and have a chuckle to yourself about.
Well, yes. Actually, I have a lot of stories, but I'm not going to tell you all of them because we won't have that kind of time. But I can tell you one thing that will make you laugh. I remember during a filming break. This was back in the 1990s, and we were filming in my parents' basement on the bridge set. And then we took a break, from filming, and all my actors ended up on my front lawn in costume, in makeup, taking a cigarette break or taking a water break. And I remember looking out the window from the kitchen and just laughing at seeing like 30 Star Trek people wandering around on my lawn, drinking and smoking.
Oh, man. We should record that.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Lost opportunity.
It's not like it is today. You could just pull out your cell phone and start recording something like that.
I know, but I did post a lot of blooper reels on my channel, and that would really give you some of the behind-the-scenes laughter and craziness that went on. If anyone is interested in seeing, what it was like to make those Star Trek films, check out the blooper reels. There's a couple of them on my channel, and it really shows you the insanity.
Yeah, they are fun. They are fun to watch. So go watch them, people, as well as the episodes. And besides that, you also you have a show you do with your daughter, the Daddy and Anya show. And I understand that's a lot about teaching her about film and technology and stuff like that. Did I get that? Is that kind of what you do with that project?
Well, okay, a lot of people say, okay, George, you're a filmmaker, so obviously you forced your daughter into doing it. But the reality is, Anya actually came up with the idea. I have never filmed an episode without her coming up to me first saying, Daddy, we have to do another episode. So the only thing I added to it was the idea of a flying space house. But once we come up with an idea, like I'll say to Anya, what do you want to do? She comes up with the concept, then we just turn the camera on and basically let it play out. So the only thing I do is I just edit it down to make sure each episode's around 2 minutes long. But it's really all her idea. My daughter seems to have inherited the filmmaking gene, but I don't force her to do it. She forces me to do it.
Yeah, because personally, I always thought it was pretty cool. And besides that, besides having a creative outlet, I mean, she's learning skills along the way. Things that are going to do her well later.
Oh, you would laugh if you heard her talk. She'll be like, Daddy, we have continuity issues. And this is coming from a 5-year-old. And I'm like, what continuity issues? She's like, Daddy, you looked away on that second take, So, yeah, I love her to death. And I guess the other byproduct is, they grow so fast that I'm actually grateful that I'm capturing this time of her life, in this video series. You'll have so much more in the end. Because if you think about it, look how many years it took for the original cast to do Star Trek the Motion Picture to the Undiscovered Country. Think how many episodes they could have made in that same amount of time. So instead of six movies, you could have had, over 100 episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. God, who wants to get inside the head of movie executives? I swear, I don't know what they think. But there's also the issue, though, I do think is real and prohibitive, is just the money factor, the royalty factor that makes it so hard to bring it back to TV. There's so many people to be paid out for a new Star Trek, and it's going to have the best special effects, because no one would accept anything less. I imagine their budgets would have to be astronomical per episode. So I wonder if that's not a big reason we don't see it.
Well, you look at it this way. The amount of money they spend on a single movie, which is like $130, $150 million, you could make on a per episode, even if you wanted to spend an awful lot of money, say even $8 million per episode or $9 million an episode, you could still get so much more for your money. And that's the bottom line. The suits really should think about that. How would we spend the same amount of money and you'd get so much more product? And then you could license the toys and the tie-ins, the fans will be there. Just look how popular all the series have been and the merchandise, where the movies don't really generate all that much merchandise.
No, they don't. In fact, they seem to have been generating more anger than anything lately.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings me to the next one. Now, for myself, as far as new track, the 2009, I did like it. I thought it was damned clever. It was a good film. After that, really didn't like the next one. I'm really skeptical about the third one. I personally feel like JJ and Bad Robot have their fingers way too deep into what can be done with Star Trek canon and what's going on with moving the direction of the franchise so completely in a different direction. What do you think about the JJ and Bad Robot influence on this whole situation with Star Trek now?
Another great question, Zan. I'll give you a very simple answer. It's disappointing in one respect, that once you set the universe into an alternate universe and now you've cleared the field to do anything you want, if you look at what the first two movies have done, they've retread enormous amounts of material already done. I cannot believe that you would take the trouble to reboot a series and say it's an alternate universe where all the rules don't apply, and then keep rehashing what was already done. So I've been disappointed them just redoing stuff. I mean, the first movie wasn't as bad because we hadn't seen Starfleet Academy, and I was a lot more forgiving of it. But the second one was absolutely unnecessary. It was, The Wrath of Khan was a great film. It did not need to be remade. And if you didn't call them Khan, if you called them something else, then maybe I would have been more accepting of the movie. But they do things in such a fast way that they ruin Star Trek logic. You can't have a transporter that can get you from Earth orbit to the Klingon homeworld. You can't have death cured by blood, because then what's the circumstance? Anyone that dies, you give them a little bit of Khan's blood and you're fine again. Even in the first movie, a sun can't go supernova very quickly. It's just nothing that can happen would lead that. And if Nero, his main anger was his family was killed, why didn't he just swing over to the planet, beam his family up, and then hope for the best, They even said the supernova was going to threaten the galaxy. That's just bad science.
Yes.
No supernova is going to threaten the galaxy, So they razzle-dazzle you like some bizarre magician and hope you don't study what they're presenting to you. And so that's why I'm so disappointed. Of course, the original Star Treks all had their faults, and I have my complaints, but at least it were consistent, and you love the characters. These new Star Treks, they tell you everyone's friends, like Kirk and Spock, but there's like no evidence for it. So it frustrates me. I'm hoping maybe with Star Trek 3, you can, start fresh, maybe go on a 5-year mission, and balance both intellect and action. But it's ridiculous that Captain Kirk was made captain at the end of that first movie. Could you imagine a naval vessel takes like a lowly ensign and puts him in charge of a nuclear carrier? It's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ludicrous. And they are beautiful action films. I will say that. They're beautiful to look at. I love the cast. I think they're doing a good job. But the scripts really, really, really need to be revamped. We need to see new things. And we need to be entertained that's both faithful to the old crowd and the new crowd.
Definitely agreed. And that just means the big problem is give us better writing.
Yes!
Oh, yeah. I'm really nervous about this next movie. It's... the original director is out, and then he's not even writing on the script anymore. But now Simon Pegg is. What's going on? What's happening? It changes, every month with this film. And, God, I've seen every Star Trek...
Hope, Zant.
Sorry, what's that? There's
one little hope, which is Wrath of Khan was made in very short order. It was like a 2-week shoot, basically, with such a tiny budget after what happened with Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and it turned out to be the best movie. So maybe they won't overbloat this one. They'll get the story out and make a good Star Trek story. So maybe this is a good sign. I don't know. I'm trying to be optimistic about it.
Yeah, me too. I do try. And as I was going to say, I've seen all of them in the theater when they've come out, dating back to the original. It's just been a tradition. But after that last movie, this is the first time I feel really shaky about it. Am I going to see the next one in the theater? Am I going to break the tradition after 30 some odd years of going in to see them when they come out in the theater? Because that last one just was, as you say, pretty much unnecessary and insulting in a lot of ways.
Totally agree.
Oh, man. Anyway, on to brighter stuff. Before we go ahead and move on, I have written down here the plug spot. So, again, if there's something specific, George, you want to plug, give it to us.
Oh, Zant, I'm a very small company. It's basically go to my YouTube channel. If you're interested in what I do, I appreciate anyone, whether they like the work or not. I do appreciate them taking the time to check it out. I will tell you that in addition to Honor Bound, I'm going to remaster my 1992 film Murder Will Out, which again is a very Twilight Zone type of thing about two brothers, one's alive, one's dead. That's one of my personal favorites, but I need to remaster it. Antyllus has got many more episodes coming out. And also I have a comedy series that I did in the 1980s that I'm hoping to get to maybe by the summer. So yeah, just visit my channel. You're always welcome, and that's pretty much where I put everything. So
Nice.
thank you so much, Dan. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for being here. And wow, it's just great news to hear there's so much more of your content coming out. And just opening up the vaults. And all kinds of new stuff is coming out.
Yeah, the vault indeed.
No problem. Well, hey, thanks for coming on, and thanks for working through our earlier difficulties to get this up and going, but determination got it done. The first interview is done, and the person we wanted to be our first guest was our first guest, Mr. George Kayaian. Thank you, man.
Thank you. Hey Dan, thank you so much. Really, I know words can't always convey your feeling, but I am so appreciative of it, and I just want to thank anyone that checks out the work. It means the world to me. All this work wouldn't be worth doing if you didn't have an audience. So thank you, and thanks to your fantastic efforts, man. You're the best.
Thanks, man. Thanks. And you're pretty good yourself. So I guess we'll all be seeing you out there, and episode 2 of the interview series will be coming in short order. There's a few other things we need to clear off the project decks first, but hopefully, I'd say next month, February sometime, you should be seeing the second installment of what will be our ongoing web series of interviews with really cool, fun people like George. So just keep hanging out, keep listening, be good, and we'll see you out there.
Live long and prosper, man.
Yes, peace and long life.